Noah, we are back, and we are talking moves to make. I got Noah with me this week, and we have 3 wide receiver buys and some moves in bulk that we want to talk about, some situations we might be buying into, selling out of, whatever the case is. We got to talk about it. We got moves to make or not. If you like the video, please leave a like on it. Comment down below what moves you're trying to make this week, as well as hopping in the Patreon Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Come check out the madness that happens on game day and every day throughout the week. With all that said, Noah, let's get to the content that people came for. Get into your first move to make, a wide receiver buy you're kicking things off with. I love this. I think it's a great thing to bring up, and maybe people are kind of tuning into this. If you're not, though, pay attention, because this is definitely somebody who should be on your radar. What do you got, Noah?
Yeah, so my first buy of the vid is Amari Cooper, a tweet that I saw this morning from Spot Track, which is like a sports contract site. And the most recent contract adjustment that the Browns made, which I think was at the end of the summer, because I didn't see anything about it happening today. And I know they did something at the end of the summer. They converted all but $1.2 million of his 2024 salary into a signing bonus, which makes him an extremely desirable trade candidate, because if a team traded for him today, they would only be on the hook for $941,000 before his contract expires at the end of the season. And I think if a team waited to trade for him till the trade deadline, it would be like $609,000, something like that. So incredibly cheap. I believe it's cheaper than the vet minimum for dudes who have played for at least 4 years in the NFL, 4 to 7 years. So I think that there are definitely going to be teams inquiring for him, and whatever pick that they might trade for him would actually cost more than the end of his contract. There are several teams that could use him, and I've heard rumors about the Broncos, the Chiefs, Rams, Cowboys, and Commanders. Now, some of those are much more probable than others, but the Browns' lack of success is making the likelihood of a Cooper trade respectably high. And here's the crazy part. Among wide receivers with at least 50 routes ran this season, he has the 84th highest catchable target rate, which is really bad. I think it's around like 63%. Yet has a 25% target share, very good. Has the 4th most air yards in the league, but is 53rd in actual receiving yards. Deshaun Watson is absolutely killing him. Now, you may express concern about his drops, as he has 5 this season, but I'd like to point out that Malik Neighbors has 7 and Jayden Reed has 4. The raw number, though, doesn't matter as much, but it's a lot of what we tend to focus on, because obviously you're more likely to have more drops when you have more targets, because Tyreek Hill had like in the double digits of drops last season. What's their drop percentage? That's the important question, as related to how many targets they have. 13.5%. Which is the same as Neighbors and Reed. All 3 of them have the exact same drop percentage, so there's no reason to be concerned about Cooper over one of the other 2. And I'm not one to lean on narratives when giving a serious opinion, but could we attribute a drop or 2 or a lack of focus derived from the helplessness of his situation? I mean, maybe not. Either way, it's not concerning to me. And one last thing. He has all this data is from Fantasy Points data suite, by the way. He has the 3rd highest expected fantasy point differential among those wide receivers with at least 50 routes, with 42.8 actual points compared to a 69.3 expected, for a difference of 26.5. 69.3 expected fantasy points is 4th highest in the league, only behind Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, Deontay Johnson, and Cortland Sutton, and more than some guys such as CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, etc. And in case you don't know what expected fantasy points are, it measures the number of fantasy points you'd expect a player to score on a per play basis, and that number is based on down and distance, yards from the goal line, and average depth of target. So the costs for Amari right now, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are not thinking rationally about his drop problem, and there are plenty of people who are thinking rationally about the terrible on-field situation he's in. He had a great performance in week 3, but followed it up with a very rough performance in week 4, which was in line with his first 2 weeks. Some trades I've seen for him on Fantasy Calc includes him for a 2025 second and third, him for Rico Dowdle on a 2025 third, and him straight up for Trey Benson. I would try to see if I could get him for a 2025 second, but I would be willing to go up from there if I couldn't do that. I think he's in line for a great fantasy finish this season.
Yeah, I don't always love playing on contingencies of if this player gets traded, because if it's Deshaun Watson the rest of the season, maybe we see a flash of what happened, last week where he was very good, and we see that kind of pick up. Maybe Deshaun Watson gets a little better, but you're playing on that if he gets traded, and I always hate there's obviously great forethought to this. Like, it makes so much sense. But is an NFL team going to pull the trigger? Are the Browns going to pull the trigger? A team that has not historically been great in the front office. So I don't hate to call it. I think it's overall a good shout. I think it's somebody who definitely needs to be talked about. And like you said, there's other teams that are going to be in consideration, not just the Chiefs. That's like the hundredth percentile outcome. That's what everybody really wants to see. But at the end of the day, don't hate it. Don't hate these values. And I know, we're getting to the point in the season where in some of my leagues, even not off to great starts. I've had a lot of injury issues. I've, had some guys miss games. I've had disappointments. We all have this season. I know I'm not alone. So I might be, and I'm not saying I'm at this point with my leagues yet, because I believe in the talent of the roster, but there are going to be managers out there now that we're 4 weeks in that are thinking about shifting gears to next year. Amari Cooper is as much a trade candidate in fantasy for those teams looking to shift to next year as he is in the IRL NFL. So keep in mind, I think this is a great shout out, Noah, and great points brought to the table. Now, a player we may or may not have some contention on, I brought him up. We actually filled out a good part of the show sheet last week, didn't get a chance to record together, but we're here now. We are talking these players now, and I'm still buying Jayden Reed. I want to get my Packer on as many rosters as I can, and a lot of this, that Packers wide receiver room is sorting itself out one way or another, by attrition, by talent, whatever the case is. Jayden Reed is separating himself not only from defenses, great separator, but also in the Packers wide receiver room. Coming into week 4, he was the only wide receiver on the team with over 20% target share heading into that week. That's still not like an elite number by any stretch of the imagination. For really elite guys, we want to see, upwards of 26, 27, 28% or higher even. And Noah, I know one of your frustrations is the utilization of Jayden Reed. And I think that right there is what's going to keep him out of that top 8 echelon of wide receivers we would love to have, and kind of lock him into that second tier of like really good wide receivers. Like, Brandon Ayuk is, and I'm not saying they're the same player, they're the same skill level, the same value or anything like that, but also a player kind of capped because there's a lot of pieces around him and just how the offense runs. Now, San Francisco is going to evolve over the course of the season in the next couple of years because of the aging of Deebo Samuel and George Kittle contracts, CMC, who knows what's going on with that. Different conversation for another day. Still like Brandon Ayuk, probably going to explode soon. But either way, we're talking about Jayden Reed. Another great thing about Jayden Reed, not only is his target share staying strong, he's getting schemed at touches in the run game, which adds to his overall upside. You like to see these gadgety players getting work any way they can. And this was happening a lot with Malik Willis under the helm. And I'm not going to take too much into account with what was just kind of while Jayden Reed had a very good game against the Vikings, that game got out of hand very quickly. Jordan Love is not going to have 50 attempts every game where everybody's getting 10 targets or whatever the case is. But overall, looking at Jayden Reed, last year was the 14th most targeted player in the red zone last season as a rookie. That hasn't come to fruition yet this season, but I truly believe it will, especially with Jordan Love getting back into the swing of things. Was not great this week, arguably, I guess you could say, having a handful of interceptions, but still finding the end zone plenty ways. That's going to come into play. Christian Watson is looking like he's going to miss some time. Looked like he avoided any fractures or things that would cause him to miss the season, but I know we're all surprised with a Christian Watson injury, but this is further to Reed's benefit, just taking one more player off the field, even though this is a great, situation. If you have Wicks, I'm not going to go buy him now, but if you have Wicks, it looks like he's the primary benefactor, I think, to Watson being gone. And I said that coming into the season. I think Wicks is the 4th man up kind of in the pecking order, but we'll see how this room shakes out overall. I still want Jayden Reed. He is still the constant in that offense. Every single week, they're going to get him work. And that's what I want in this offense, a high-powered offense with Love under Matt LaFleur. The run game with Josh Jacobs has not been awesome so far this season. He's had a couple, hot and cold stretches, whatever the case is. But Cost is still kind of up in the air for Jayden Reed, and that is something that I think is going to be off-putting. It's about finding the right deal. These are actual trades that happened on Dynasty Daddy. I know not everybody loves when we pull real life trades that have happened in actual real life leagues, as opposed to just putting things in a trade calculator. I don't know, whatever the case is, but actual trades that have happened for Jayden Reed. Jordan Mason for Jayden Reed straight up, Kyle Pitts and a 0.5 tight end premium for Jayden Reed, Sam Darnold for Jayden Reed straight up and a super flex, Xavier Worthy straight up for Jayden Reed, Brian Thomas Jr. straight up for Jayden Reed, and a 25 first straight up for Jayden Reed. Honestly, I think in a lot of those deals, you're going to be able to get a piece back with Jayden Reed, because I think there's a lot of people who value Brian Thomas Jr. over Jayden Reed. And I think there's people now with the Rashee Rice injury that also are going to value Xavier Worthy over Jayden Reed. Sam Darnold, depends on who you're talking to probably with that one. And maybe that needs come into play, whatever the case is. Kyle Pitts on a 0.5 tight end premium. His year has not come to fruition like we'd hoped, but the tight end landscape is still dog water, so he's still plenty relevant in that landscape. But I think the tight end premium, you're probably getting a little bit more back. Jordan Mason is another one. Huge question mark, similar to Darnold. What's his role look like going forward? And that's because with the CMC news, now we're hoping for a November comeback. Never a good sign when a player is looking out that far and hoping for a November comeback when they were allegedly, quote unquote, pretty healthy coming into the year. You don't love to see that. So I'm still in on Jayden Reed. I know the utilization is frustrating for me too, and that's going to lead to those weeks, those ebbs and flows where he's having really good weeks and really less exciting weeks. Because if he's not efficient with his touches like he has been throughout his career, if he's not super efficient, those are going to be weeks where, you know, you're left wanting a little bit more. But I still want to get him on my roster. I don't think you're paying wide receiver 1 prices yet. And I don't know if you'll ever pay like elite wide receiver 1 prices for him. And I think that's okay. I think he's somebody that is going to creep over the course of his career in this year and heading into next, where he's a very, very, very good wide receiver 2 for your roster. Your starting lineup, that is. So Noah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, any pushback, any additions you'd like to make. Feel free. What do you got?
I want to start out by saying I like Jayden Reed. I think he's an incredible athlete. I think he is a good wide receiver, and I like him being attached to that Packers offense. My main concern comes from, I think that there are some people, and I could be wrong, I think I might be looking at some of these trades, who might be overvaluing him a little bit. Sure. Now, I think it's going to be a lot better for him if Christian Watson is out for any extended period of time. Looking at these trade prices, I think it's kind of highly dependent on what you need for your team right now. But, you know, if I am in need of a good wide receiver that I can probably count on more weeks than not, I have no issue trading him for probably Kyle Pitts, Jordan Mason, and probably maybe Darnold or one of the. Worthy is hard because I think Worthy's usage is going to go up a lot now that Rice is gone. So I think that could be a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I think that these are more fair than what I thought they were. And I think the only other thing I had was he is by far and away the most efficient fantasy producer in the league this season. And that normally points to some pretty significant regression at some point. Now, you know, that could show up in him scoring like 3 points one week and then being fine afterwards. But yeah, I don't mind this, and I think these prices are probably pretty accurate for him. So I like it.
You got another player who I love. No, I'm so glad we're talking about this player.
I know
again.
You love this guy.
Oh man, I am pumped about it. I feel a lot of validation. I just feel loved with this pick. Noah, who do you got? Who's your move to make buy here? Your buying move to make. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I feel a lot of validation too, not even because of this guy, but because of a guy that's related to him. So my move is to buy Josh Downs, and sorry, the entire video is wide receivers, but you know, running backs and tight ends are kind of doing their thing right now. So, you know, that is what it is. But yeah, so Josh Downs, in case you don't know, he was out for the first 2 weeks of the season. He's been back the last 2 weeks, so weeks 3 and 4. When he returned from the injury, he immediately shot back into relevance. Over the past 2 weeks, he's came back to a 70.9% route share right off of missing the first 2 games of the season with an injury, which I think is really impressive for his first games back. And he has completely downgraded A.D. Mitchell to a 20% route share after Mitchell had a 70% route share for the first 2 weeks. They like Pierce in that role. They had A.D. Mitchell in Downs' role, it looks like, and now Downs is back. So, and now we've had the luxury of seeing him get targeted by A-Rich and Flacco. And you can probably confidently say that he will get targets regardless of who's throwing him the ball. So, if you're concerned about Anthony Richardson's, in injury problems, then, I think you can take solace in knowing the backup is Flacco. I think Flacco, kind of like Jameis Winston, who I think could possibly take over in Cleveland at some point, is a great quarterback for fantasy purposes. And, take this with a grain of salt because it's a tiny sample size. But after 2 weeks, he's the wide receiver 25 in points per game at 13.7. And, it's not like he scored 3 points 1 week and then like 27 the next. Like it was pretty close, if I remember right. And nothing about his utilization suggests that he's overperforming either. He's a legit wide receiver in an offense where adjustments will have to be made to get the ball into playmakers' hands and not just JT's. As far as his cost goes, I'm seeing trades on Fantasy Calc for straight up for Roschon Johnson, for Tyler Conklin, for Wan'Dale Robinson in 2025 fourth, for DeAndre Hopkins, and a 2025 third. So a decent range, but I can't say I would avoid any of those. And given the situation in Indy, people may be bearish on the entire offense. I'd start, keyword start, to try to snag Downs by sending a 2025 second for Downs and a 2025 third. But I would work down a little if needed because that's just the player that I think Downs is. So now that I got to talk about one of your favorite players, Bob, what do you think about that?
I love this. I'm all about it, and I'm here for the A.D. Mitchell slander as well. I mean, Josh Downs through 2 games has 14 targets. A.D. Mitchell through 4 games has 13 targets. And on those 13 targets, A.D. Mitchell has 2 converted receptions. I know we also are maybe double counting Anthony Richardson's lack of accuracy from time to time, but that is just, that's just dog water. That's like freaky low numbers. And I would be concerned. And Alec Pierce, since Josh Downs has been back, 4 targets compared to, which honestly, he didn't have a ton the first 2 weeks. If you take away week 2, where he had 8 targets, only had 3 in week 1, 8 in week 2, 2 in week 3, 2 in week 4. So that certainly regressed to the mean of what Alec Pierce has been. I am all about this buy. He is currently the Colts' highest graded PFF wide receiver. Fun fact, who cares? I know not everybody's a PFF grade fan, but either way, I just love this pick. And like you said, once I think after Josh Downs' first week with him back in the lineup, you saw A.D. Mitchell go back to just absolute obscurity with this offense. So very concerning if you're an A.D. Mitchell fan, truther, believer, rosterer, manager, whatever the case is. But very, very good feelings if you have Josh Downs, or you can still acquire him rather cheaply. Because I'm absolutely going to go do that. So the only one that you brought up that I might have some pause with, and I'd probably still do it, but the Wan'Dale deal. Wan'Dale's been getting
I
just
agree with that.
peppered with targets, which, hey, I had that projected coming into the season. If you checked out my 2024 projections for fantasy football, you would see that he was definitely somebody on my radar as a bit of a buy low coming into the season. But either way, we'll move on into some rapid fire-ish kind of deals. We're talking moves to make in bulk or not. So the first conversation we got to have, Carolina's offense under Andy Dalton is just a different monster. So is this Carolina offense good now? They kind of went toe-to-toe with the Bengals, almost kind of pulled away a win, almost kind of up for grabs, I guess. Either way, they put up a fight, certainly more than people thought. But hey, since our defense, has not been stellar this season, so who knows? That's still a question mark. But is the offense good? Are we loving Andy Dalton, Deontay Johnson buys right now? Is Bryce Young somebody worth a stash? And are they set up for a Brooks return from the pup where he's going to be the guy Or, in my opinion, does Chuba Hubbard keep his workload a little bit and they ease Jonathan Brooks back into things? No, we got a lot to unpack. What are you thinking about this Carolina offense as a whole?
Yeah, so I like it. I like the Carolina offense. I like Dave Canales. I've said that. I was wrong about Bryce. I don't think I was wrong about Canales.
Sure.
There's a very good podcast I listened to the other day. It's called Plain English. It's on Spotify. And they had a journalist coming in talking about the state of the NFL quarterback and, all the differences and defenses and whatnot. And, we're like, I don't think it's a coincidence that these later career players are starting to find success later in their careers or still have success. I mean, Baker, Dalton, Geno, Darnold, they've been around and they have experience. And this is just even further proof that we've got to stop starting rookie quarterbacks as soon as they get to the league and realize that CJ Stroud last year was a major anomaly. And that just doesn't happen for a lot of guys. You look at some of the best quarterbacks, to ever play. I mean, Mahomes and Brady didn't start right away. They got to sit and watch and be around. So, just something to consider. I'm really in on Dalton. I'm really in on Deontay. As far as I would want to buy both of them. Prices are a little bit up in the air. I would probably try to buy Deontay for a second. I'd pay a little bit more than that if I had to. I'm really, really in on him. I was in the offseason as well. I would do everything I could to avoid paying a second for Dalton right now. And I think it's worth to say that I think he probably will have a regression game soon. And that might be the time to jump on it, especially if people do believe that Jonathan Brooks is going to return and take over a chunk of that offense, which I don't think so because Chuba is already getting a lot of volume. And I have to agree with what somebody said earlier today on a pod I was listening to is they could very easily see it being that Brooks comes back and they start giving him the high value touches and Chuba the low value trash touches.
Sure.
So I'm excited for both of them. Brooks, I'm a little unknown about. I'm very in on the passing offense now. And, maybe even Xavier Legette, even though he wasn't one of my favorites in the offseason. I'll still confidently say Mingo is terrible. So that's where I'm at, Bob.
Yeah, I am pretty much in lockstep with you. I certainly think my biggest probably point of contention is everybody flipping the switch that Jonathan Brooks is back. He's going to get everything. Chuba Hubbard's going to be gone. Chuba Hubbard has been Devin Singletary the last 2 years where he just, and not necessarily the same player, not necessarily as efficient or anything like that, but just won't go away. Every year he's gotten work. He's managed to find a way into this offense, get work. I don't see him just going away. He's been faithful to this team. He's due for a contract next season, most likely somewhere else where somebody's going to give him some type of shot. I don't know if it's anything great, but he's going to get a shot somewhere on a decent contract. I don't think he's staying here. And Jonathan Brooks, got to remember, dude's coming back from an ACL. It's not like he had a hamstring injury in the preseason and they put him on the pup for the sake of it. Yeah. Coming back from an ACL, we've had, a couple running backs that have bucked that trend, namely Breece Hall, who has kind of, jumped back from last year, came back from an ACL on 1 year rest or 1 year recoup time, whatever the case is. But that's not the norm. So I think, like you said, maybe Brooks gets high value stuff, but they're going to give Chuba some trash and just, use him as the battering ram. He's still going to get work. He's still going to be somewhat efficient. But I definitely think that pump the brakes a little bit on Jonathan Brooks. I probably am not throwing him in any starting lineups anytime soon when he is back, because I do think it's going to be, maybe on the tail end of the season, he'll be a little better. But I think early on, especially when we're in the meat of the season right now, the next 4 to 8 weeks when he's back, pump the brakes a little bit. I think he's going to take some time to get into it, but could be wrong. But the history is on my side with running backs taking a little time coming back from ACLs.
And I agree. And I think it's also important to point out that every notification I've gotten for Jonathan Brooks is he is entering the final stages of his ACL healing. Yeah. And they're making no commitment. They didn't open up his 21-day window today. We see Chubb's window got open. So they're obviously not fully comfortable giving themselves a 3-week leash, even for now, on bringing him back. So I don't think you're going to see him in week 5 or week 6, honestly. So I agree.
Yeah, definitely pump those brakes and pump some brakes on some running backs that I put up here as quote unquote trash running backs that have been just a tremendous disappointment. Now, I had DeAndre Swift on this list. We were, like I mentioned at the top, we were going to record late last week, didn't get a chance to. DeAndre Swift actually finally had a good week, managed over 2 yards per carry in a game, which is pretty sick if you ask me, but has been kind of outshined in that backfield. You got Zamir White, you got Gus Edwards, you got Javonte Williams. Are any of these guys this trash, quote unquote, your treasure, another man's trash, another man's treasure? Or are we selling the lot here? Are we out on these guys? And conversely, maybe you have these guys in your roster. You can't sell them. You can't start them. Are there any running backs out there, Noah, that you think we could buy on the cheap right now to kind of mend the wounds that these running backs have left for us? What do you think here?
I don't really have anything to say about the ones that we have listed here. Swift, White, Edwards, Javonte, completely avoiding them. If I have them, then I guess I would probably sell White and Edwards and probably sell them for a third. I wouldn't quite want to do that with Swift or Javonte. Don't ask me why, but because I think they both still have a fair shot of being the RB1 on the team. Antonio Pierce riding the hot hand, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So Zamir White's probably not going to do anything. So I'm pretty out on them, trying to get them off my roster. As far as guys to buy on the cheap, I don't really think that there's a lot of them, because a lot of the ones that you could say would be like the other Broncos running backs, maybe. Roschon Johnson with the Bears, Madison, like anybody like that. I don't want any of those people. What I will say is, if we're looking for somebody cheap who I think is going to maintain his role, and obviously we're scraping bottom of the barrel here, I really don't mind trying to go out and get Justice Hill, because I don't know what the Ravens are doing on offense this year, but they have firmly aligned their identity. And, our offensive line may have gotten worse, but dang it, we're still going to run the ball, and we want to use our running backs. And that's killing Mark Andrews, and it's killing Isaiah Likely, and Zay Flowers isn't doing super hot either. I think Hill is going to be a pretty consistent, minimum 4 or 5 targets a game. And I think for what you might go pay for him, I don't think that that's bad at all. I probably wouldn't pay any more than a third, but I would happily send a third if I needed a flex starter.
I love the call, Noah, honestly. Looking at recent trades too, all happening today. Justice Hill for a 26 third and a 26 fourth. Justice Hill for Javon Baker and a 25 third. Justice Hill for a 25 third, 26 third. Justice Hill for a 26 third, 26 fourth. So, I mean, you're right on that fence. Justice Hill for Carson Steele. I mean, I'm here for it. Guy who is, just fumbled in the last game and seemingly kind of got a little bit of a talking to and subsequently kind of taken out of the game.
I would also add Hunt to the list too.
Of guys you go buy cheap. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm with you on that. Definitely worth knocking on the door, because he actually, I believe, had the most rush share out of the bunch as well. So definitely somebody worth looking at. I'm in pretty much, I echo just about everything you said. If you got any of these guys, unfortunately, there's probably some stuckness unless you're really willing to sell really low. But they all have, and we talked about this pre-show, they all have other backfield complements that are kind of like either would need to go down or something, but they're just plain and simple not being efficient with the work they're given. I made the joke pre-show too with Gus Edwards. If you need a guy to get you 1 to 2 yards on first or second down, he is your man. But other than that, not been much for you this season. It's been the J.K. Dobbins show. DeAndre Swift just had a good game, and kind of flashed what we've seen in the past from him. Maybe that continues. I don't know if it's going to be to that extent. Maybe, hopefully, we can just meet somewhere in the middle. Fingers crossed for that. But otherwise, I am all about, and I really like that Justice Hill shout. I've had him in my flex in one of my leagues that I'm still doing good in. So he's been a contributor to that. So either way, that was moves to make. that is it for the video today, but we hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, comment down below, let us know what moves you're trying to make, and head over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Links are in all of the description. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening. If you're listening on podcasts, you can find us just about everywhere. But with all that said, all the promo in the books, we are going to get the heck out of here, but we will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.